D-Lo 404 Boxing. All right, y'all, I want to talk about a common occurrence I'm seeing in the sport of boxing. Or several occurrences, but they're all tied into each other. So we have fighter A goes out, has a dominant performance, beat fighter B. Immediately afterward, first thing we start hearing is nobody can beat this guy. Oh, I don't think anybody can beat this guy right now. Or there's only one or two people that can beat this guy. And it's like, okay, if that's the case, if you guys just know this for a fact, then it's almost like, well, what's the point of anybody else fighting? Let's just put them in the ring with those two guys and, go from there. Next thing, and people forget that, maybe like one fight removed, this guy went life and death with some other guy, but now it's like he had a dominant performance. Nobody can beat him. Other thing that happens, you have a guy go out there and have a tougher than expected fight against someone, whether he wins or whether he loses, whatever the case may be. And then immediately after that, you start hearing people come on YouTube, going to the boxing groups, they'll be in your comment section of your videos, in the Facebook group, making the posts and making comments on different threads, all talking about what somebody else will do to them because this person did X, Y, Z to them. And if there had been fighter C instead of fighter B, fighter C would have stopped him and all that. And it goes on all the time. And it makes me wonder, are you psychic boxing fans? Are you guys batting 1,000 on your bets? Are you guys all wealthy because you already know the predetermined outcome of all these fights that happen? Apparently you guys always bet on the right fights and win money because you already know how they're going to play out. So I'm sure all of you guys that I hear on YouTube making such statements as if they're factual because in your mind that's what's going to happen. I'm sure all of you guys are very well off, living lavish lifestyles, and don't have to worry about a thing because your bank account is pretty robust. The reality is that we all can look at fights, look at styles, look at matchups and say, this is how we figure this should play out or would play out based on supported evidence, based on the styles of the guys, based on comparative fights, based on how they looked against other guys who had a similar style or how they looked against a guy who they had a common opponent or whatever the case may be. But in reality, in the sport of boxing, it's called the theater of the unexpected for a reason. You never know how a fight is going to play out. You in most cases may feel like, okay, this guy's a huge underdog. This is probably how it's going to play out. This is how it's going to go. But sometimes things do not go that way. Sometimes a guy has a great night when it's least expected. Sometimes another guy doesn't have the night he should have had or was expected to have. Maybe sometimes it's a case of a guy overlooking someone, looking ahead to the next fight, not taking a guy so serious. Or sometimes, they just didn't, the homework that they did on the guy told one story, but when they got in the ring with the guy, he was on a whole nother chapter. So you just never know. And to me, I think that's what makes boxing great. But when I hear people start saying things about this is what will happen for certain if these two guys fight, it almost sounds like to me, and I've actually heard this said too, like there's no point in seeing that fight. This is how it happened. This is what'll go down. When you talk about guys like, say for instance, Demetrius Andrade versus Charlo, or Demetrius Andrade versus Canelo, or Canelo versus Charlo, Benavidez versus Charlo, Canelo versus Beterbiev, whoever the case may be. And I'm just using those few guys because they're all kind of linked together, but it's always this is what's going to happen in that fight. So, and it's like, I understand giving your opinion, breaking it down, giving an assessment, but there's a whole nother thing together to say unequivocally for certain, just as sure as the sun's going to rise, that this is how this fight plays out. And even to add the topping on the cake, saying that sometimes even saying there's no point in seeing that fight. To me, that is fight, block, and talk. I don't subscribe to that. I'm not into the whole trying to stop fights from taking place. because I feel like one guy don't deserve a fight, or I feel like one guy is going to beat another guy for sure. All of that is a moot point. These fights gotta happen in the ring. We can think what we want to think about how they're gonna play out, but until they actually play out, we don't know. None of us have an all-seeing eye or looking glass or crystal ball that's going to tell us unequivocally that these fights play out this way for sure. But some people get in the comment section, some people make posts, some people go on YouTube, make videos, speaking as if they have been told from the boxing gods that this is what happens if these two guys get in the ring, and what you saw last night or whatever was just a sample of how it would play out. And they get on their soapbox and they talk about all of this negative stuff about why the fight shouldn't happen and this, that, and the other is a waste of time. Well, you guys, why don't you all start doing videos on the betting odds and start telling us who to bet on and things like that, so we can all be wealthy and well off like you guys must be, because you're always getting it right way ahead of time. And the other thing that I want to say on this is that for those who come out here and talk in such a way, I have to look at you side-eye and think that either you're A, that narcissistic, B, you're in the fight blocking business, or C, you just have you're out of touch with reality and really don't understand the sport of boxing the way you try to convey it to your fans. You guys, you sound crazy getting out here saying some of the things that you say. And then when these fights do happen and they don't play out the way you said, 90% of y'all won't get back on here and eat crow and say I was wrong. I came out after the Montiel and Charlo fight and said I was wrong about the fight. Gave Montiel his props. Gave Charlo his props, but also critiqued him on the things that I felt like I saw that he didn't do so well. More of us need to do that when we're wrong. But at the same time, we got to stop going out here trying to tell the people that we know for sure this is what's going to happen, and then the ones who don't know as much about the sport start just running with it and saying, they start echoing, hey, that fight ain't even worth happening, blah, 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 blah. Nobody wants to hear that shit. You know what I'm saying? These fights need to be being made. We got to stop having fantasy talk about fights that could happen in the now. I understand having conversations about what we think might happen or what we want, but we got to stop talking as if we just know it's a foregone conclusion. To me, that's almost like saying there's no point in seeing the fight. And like I said, some of you actually even say that. When Andre struggled in his fight or didn't dominate in the manner in which I felt he should have, first thing people started talking about it, that was Charlo in there. This is what would have happened. He'd have got stopped. Same thing with Charlo after Saturday night. If that was Benavidez in there, Charlo would have got stopped. And it goes on. And it's not just those guys. I'm talking about them because those are like two of the freshest fights in my mind where people did this. But I'm going to leave it at that. I went on long enough on this rant. Hopefully somebody got something out of it. If not, hey, it helped me. That's all I got to say on the subject. D-Lo 404 Boxer. Like, share, comment, subscribe. I'm out. Peace.